do not reflect those of WSMN, its owners, and/or associates.
Lisa and Robin are two fun friends diving deep into conversations where nothing is taboo. They believe in eating dessert before dinner and wearing the bikini. They're allergic to labels, authority, and cheap shoes. Currently, they're launching themselves through life being the good time, bold enough to take risks and inquisitively asking, what's next? They hail from New Hampshire, but they could be anywhere dressed in cute clothes. If they had to share a tombstone, it would read, "Curiosity killed these cats." Your hosts, Lisa and Robin on the mic.
Welcome back to the second hour of Lisa and Robin on the mic. You are listening on WSMN 1590 AM, 95.3 FM. You can watch, stream, and listen on WSMN.live, as well as YouTube, and we are up on Spotify. Robin is back with us.
I know. I was just thinking, I love having pop-ins.
Yeah.
I
So much fun.
pop-in.
And I attacked him about the astronomy versus astrology.
I know.
Because I meant to ask that day when he said, "Oh yeah, we make our meetings in accordance with the full moon." I thought you don't believe in that stuff. What happened? I got to get back in there.
Right.
Ask that question. And it was interesting because we went to a family birthday party over the weekend, and we went to this delicious or this really fun Greek restaurant, and there's dancing. And I always noticed that,
Opa.
that there's so much fun dancing. And so the next day we're listening to music, and we found this great artist that does a lot of Mediterranean music. So I saved them on my Spotify.
Nice.
And it's called Pavlo, Pavlo. If you want to,
I have to look it up.
when you go somewhere, if you go on a Mediterranean vacation, you come home and you try to recreate the ambiance of where you just came from based on the music that you hear. At least we do that.
Pavlo music?
Yeah,
Is it
Pavlo.
Is it a type of music?
No, that's the artist name.
Oh,
So look under artist for that.
all right. I got musician.
So this is something we do kind of all the time. You go somewhere, you hear music, and then even if you go to a concert, after the concert you're playing that music, you go to an opera or some kind of special musical event, you come back and you're recreating that feeling by that music.
Yes.
And we were looking at him up to see, does he ever play live? Could we see him? And so he was playing all over the Mediterranean, and he said he wanted to bring his music to America. And they said that it would never be accepted, that there's no interest in that Mediterranean
Really?
music in the United States. And so he and his wife created their own 350 city tour, which
Cool.
they sold out across the United States.
Awesome. Yes.
And I saw something else, and it was an interview with Rick Rubin, who is an American record producer, and he has produced really major stars, but they are so different from each other that he had said every time he goes on a new venture, they say it won't work.
Yes.
Right? You're told that you're known for this genre. You can't go breaking out in that genre. No one wants to hear
Think about how
from
many
you.
times Elon Musk, people told him that that's not going to happen, or you can't do this, or Facebook, Zuckerberg, like all these people. Like, how do you think Ben Franklin? I mean, take it back way back. How many times did they say that will never work? Like, you're
Right.
foolish to be doing that stuff.
So my question is, when do you listen to the theys and when don't you? What is the part of you that delineates if the advice of the theys is useful or not? Everything from don't open a restaurant, because 85%.
Well, Chris always asks me. He's like, "You always ask my opinion, but you never ask me." I'm like, "Well, I'm not really asking your opinion. I'm asking your thoughts. Like, I want to hear. I'm open to receive feedback." And he's like, "Yeah, but most people don't do that. Like, or I'm open to receive. If I'm uncertain about something, I will ask people a lot of questions. Like, so I'm getting different perspectives. So that helps me make a better decision for myself." Instead of just listening to, like, okay, well, I'll take that. Then I'll go, don't go to Costa Rica. You shouldn't do this. You shouldn't do that. Well, I'm just going to do a little bit of my own research, and then I'll make my own decision. And I think that's what we should teach kids, teach people how to, because I think that there's a lot of negativity, and I think there's a lot of judgment in the world, and I think people attach their own fears, and some of it is for good, like they don't want you to be unsafe, but when
Or they don't want you to be hurt, or they don't want you to lose money, or they don't want you to have, it comes from a place usually of protection.
yes,
But maybe the Rick Rubins who, they've been this amazing record producer for 40 years and no one's ever had the faith in them that they could do something new after they've proven that they can do new 10 times. The 11th time is the wrong time. The 12th
Right.
time is the wrong time.
yeah.
But how much, and do you feel like and I'm using the they in quotation marks.
Well, you're like, well, they heard you. Well, they said it. Well, who's they?
Right.
They's always the,
Yeah, the they.
always out there.
The theys
Yeah.
of the world too. And I don't even know who they are. But we do know who they are.
Yes.
We can picture a they at
It's
any
all those
moment.
damn naysayers out there.
Right.
I remember one time, like one of the things that I appreciated about my mom when we were going to Germany. We were going to go to France, Germany, and maybe England or something. But ISIS was really, they were doing a lot of things in London. And I had a patient of mine, and she said, if you're going to go to Paris, don't go to France right now. Don't go to Paris, because there's so much military presence in all the tourist spots and everything because of all the ISIS stuff that was going on. And I think it was Ebola or some other kind of virus, Zika or something that was going out around that same time. And just listening to the news, and I was like, well, we've already booked our trip. Like, do we do this? Do we not do it? And Mom and I were kind of on the fence, because it's two women traveling with two, 13 to 14-year-olds. Like, do I do it? There had been some terrorist attacks on hijacking airplanes. And it's like, do we do it? And Mom's like, you just have to live your life. You can't live in fear. And I was like, and she's like, you just have to trust. But at the same time, Chris and I were in Florida at down the hurricane, and we're golfing, and 45-mile-an-hour winds, and both of our parents were like, "You guys need to evacuate. They're evacuating the area." And I'm like,
We're golfing.
"I'm almost 50 at that point."
Right.
Mom, I'm almost 50. I'm swimming in the pool right now, watching the palm trees whip around. I feel like I'm okay.
Right.
But she did. She did. And she backed off a little bit. And I noticed one time she came up to visit, and my daughter's, in Boston. My mom had visited Boston, but now she's in Boston eating lunch, but she's experiencing it different because knowing that my granddaughter's going to live here. So she's, trying to be mama bear and protective, and, don't do this and don't go out at night, and you shouldn't ride the T and do this and do this. And I finally just said, Mom, that's enough. And she got it, and she just backed down, because what you're doing is, I know you're coming from a good place, but what you're doing is you're taking your anxiety and your fears and you're putting it on something else, where I've been trying to you got this, be safe, be smart. It's okay to say, when you're on the tee, and there's a lot of different ways to say it, when you're on the tee at night, always have your spray with you, have your shock pen with you, don't be so engrossed in your phone that you're not aware of your surroundings. There's lots of different ways to, there's a few times she's called me. She's like, somebody sketchy's on here. Do you mind just till I get to the next stop? And I'm like, absolutely. And so she's learning her ways. So to navigate and be prepared around it instead of running from it. And that's what we do, is we stop somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
My question is, do you think that we stop people that have a great idea, or saying that it won't work because we're afraid of their success?
I don't know. I don't know if it comes from a place of fear of success. It definitely feels like when it's happening that it is, for lack of a better term, a protective measure.
But think about Pablo. Or you think about going out and starting a new
And I'm sure they were saying it from don't waste your money going over there. You're not going to sell any tickets. It's going to cost a ton of money. You're losing out on the opportunity you have here with a following that loves you and goes. And there's no indication that that anybody would like your music there, and you're going to go broke trying to. I mean, I'm sure that's where it originates from.
But why not like put a feeler out there? What is
Right.
it? What is it? What damage does it do to that one to say, well, you know what? We'll put a few songs out and just see. We'll put a feeler out to see.
Right.
Like that's helping somebody move forward. And you know, every time I think about, especially when we travel or even when we go out to dinner and we're local, Chris is like, this is why I don't like eating out, because food is so much better at home. We've had this conversation over and over again. And I would be like, yes, I would love to start a restaurant. I don't want to do all the work. I don't want to, I don't want to do all the work. I want to say, this is how you cook the food. That maybe you teach people how to cook it to your flavor, your taste.
But the thing is, I don't think that's what's lacking in restaurants. There are amazing chefs, execution on a regular basis, sourcing the food. I mean, how many times?
Yeah, but how many times every time I've said I would love to open a restaurant, how many times people say that's not going to make you money? Do you know how hard that is? First businesses fail in the first 5 years, and restaurants are the hardest thing to make money at and get business. You hear that every single time you say, I would love to open a restaurant.
So I've never had a love of opening a restaurant because I know how much work is involved in it. And so I've never said I would like to open a restaurant. That is not one of my, if I lived 100 years, that's in one of my 100 years plans. It's not. Because I know cooking for people for money is a completely different experience for cooking for people for love.
That is true.
Two totally different
But that's why I
experiences.
said, to be more specific, the kinds of food that I like, to the way that I cook them, and creating that space and that ambiance, creating the experience I want. That's what it would be like. That's why I would like to do a restaurant like that. Like really good food, a great environment. Like that's the draw for me. And it's more like an experience, trying to create that experience for somebody else. But that's one of the examples where they always tell you it's not going to make you any money.
Right.
Don't do that.
Right. And the people who do restaurants and do them really well make a ton of money. But there is a large percentage of people who go down trying.
Yeah.
But you can say that about a lot of businesses.
A construction company, or starting a new, electricians, starting any new business, even when you're in the trades, when they're in high demand, you still have to get your know, like, trust out there. You have to, people have to have something that they're going to trust.
And how do you ride the downtimes? Because in every business, there's a downtime. And I think of this also, too, because we've gone through, I heard a businessman talking to a group of yoga instructors of all things. And he was saying, everyone comes up to me as a business coach and asks me when we're going to get back to normal. That there's been so many changes. When is normal coming back? And I am here to tell you this is normal. Stop waiting for a previous time that was better in your eyes. Make this space better, because there is no going back. Just like when there's a trauma and there's a before and an after, like you were one person before, you're one person after. We are a different after.
Yes. Yes.
And we're never going to go back to the way it was before. We have shifted. There are too many things that have shifted us.
Yeah. Yeah.
He said the number of people being born now is less than it's ever been on the planet. The number of people who will enter the workforce.
I think that has to do with the, gender identity crisis too. A little bit of that. And
just financially, if you were 22, would you want to afford kids when you... when you're doing your
22-year-olds can't even afford to leave their own home right now.
Right.
The economy. So of course you don't.
So I think that plays a big piece of it. The affordability. We just got the New Hampshire Realtor magazine, and it had 4th year in a row affordability down. And it's like, so if no one could afford anything 4 years ago and it's only gotten more expensive, how is affordability not the number one priority of everyone in the state office?
I know. I was looking at land down there, and I'm like, Chris, you want to buy some property down here? I mean, you can still get like beachfront property in some places. I mean, it's rural. I'll show you some of the pictures, but man, it really makes you think about. He's like, I could come down here and live get in with the locals, and we left our we gave a $20 tip to a guy, and he just the gratitude of it, like, oh my God, like they weren't used to even just a, you know, I think
Yeah,
was
it
at
costs
the-
$50 to park your car for a couple of hours in Boston. It costs $2 to have someone watch your car there. Right?
Well, the night that we parked in his parking lot, $8
Mhm.
for 4 hours, 5 hours, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It was
Yeah, so I think of this from the perspective of hearing that gentleman say, stop wondering when it's going to be the way it was,
Right.
because it's never going to be that way
Right.
again.
right because
then
we've
does
all
that-
changed.
So that takes everything that we've used as expertise and experience and almost negates it. Does
No,
it?
you use it as a stepping stone. It's a platform to evolve. That's
But then when you say anything new,
because we're not the same person. You
Yeah.
know, it's like you go back and you pine for the days of high school, but you've had so many more experiences, or you've had so many different. Yes, you're going to lose some of the good, but you're also going to lose some of the bad too. I think.
yeah.
So I think that it's
And romanticizing the past is better when not
Right.
necessarily
Right.
always the same way.
well, but even looking back on your life, and you thought how devastating it was when that guy broke up with you, or you got this bad grade, or like when you're
Yeah.
or even in your 20s and you start, things happen and you think it's a devastating moment. But now you look back and like for me, when I was going through a divorce, I thought it was the worst thing ever. I grew up in Southern Baptist church where, it's one of the 7 deadly sins is divorce, and it was bad, and you don't do this. And I'm like, I couldn't fathom. And I'm like, God wants you to be this way. Religion wants you to be there. They put it in such a tight box. And I'm like, as I've grown and expanded and learned more, that's not what he says at all. That's someone else's interpretation of it. And, that's how they make all the rules for, religions. Somebody's like, well, yeah, their doctrine. These are the set of rules that we're going to focus on. And I'm like, that's not true at all. And I thought that was one of the worst times in my life. It was scary as hell. I didn't know what the heck I was doing. And there's a part of me is like, I felt like that was a failure. I didn't want to have a failed relationship. And for the longest time, and now it's the best thing that ever happened to both of us.
Right.
I think.
Right.
His birthday was a couple of weeks ago. I sent him a happy birthday. Like, people that you hold on to those anger, and, we've been told our whole life that that's so bad. No, I think it's so bad if you stay in a relationship where you're miserable because they tell you divorce is bad.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. I'm happier than I've ever been. I think he's happier than he's ever been. You're young. We're 22 when we got married. What do you know about raising a family or starting a family and having a real relationship at 22? So I think that, even from a religious standpoint, think about how many...
Or even from
in
a
the
religious...
Bible,
yeah.
forgiveness is talking about forgiveness. So you don't have malice in your heart, like realizing, hey, we are not the right fit for each other. I don't think that there's any sin in that. But
There's this funny program called Father Ted, and this priest gets put out on Craggy Island. So just imagine what Craggy Island looks like. It's a made-up place, but it's called Craggy Island, and so nothing good can come on.
barren rocks everywhere.
And so he's on this island, and this couple, he's always coming to this couple when they're in the throes of literally trying to kill each other. So one episode, the wife's trying to kill the husband. The other episode, the husband tries to kill the wife. The next episode, the wife's in a cast. Oh, no, just fell down the stairs when there was something placed there. Don't worry about it, Father. She does this whole thing. And then the husband has like a bandage on his head. Oh, no, just cracked my skull a little bit in the morning, So they have all these things because in their fight, and then they pretend to be so in love when the father shows up, and then the minute the father leaves,
yes.
these two are like gunning for the death of the other one because it's till death do they part. And that's
Yes.
the only way they can part
Yes.
is by death.
Yes.
So they're going to
Yes.
kill one another
Yes.
because they got to get out of this relationship.
Yes, but I do think a lot of people show up to church like that. Like, let's be all good, and then once we get out, like we can go back to being our miserable, nasty self.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
barking at it. You know, just,
Yeah. Yeah. So
No.
yeah, and so I was thinking of that musician, and then I was thinking of that business coach that was saying we have to stop wondering when we're going to get back to a different time, and we really have to focus on what does the future look like. And I talked from that conversation. I talked to like 4 different business owners and just asked them like, "How are you doing?" And everybody said the same thing. Like, I just don't know. Like, I'm in this crux of what does the future look like in a lot of ways. I'm having trouble keeping staff. I'm having trouble keeping people hired. You know, it's not that the people I talked to said that there wasn't enough business. It was how to.
making it harder to run businesses.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Well, even look at
They said the cost of the expenses of the business and then the expenses of employees and then even keeping decent trained employees.
Yeah.
Was a very.
I think that we've done society an injustice about. To me, I think it ties in with like customer service. We're not teaching these young teenagers. So you think about when we first got jobs as teenagers. You know, you knew it's a transition job, but you still had an expectation to be respectful, to be nice, put a smile on your face, and communicate with your customer or your client. We don't teach any of that anymore. And it's just, we need warm bodies, so we're going to hire you. It doesn't matter how you show up. You don't have to show up in service. I think that ties into it too.
Right.
And I think because we're getting into these people like, well, I don't want to work for that. Like, that sounds miserable. You know, people aren't wanting to work.
Or that's not what I want to do with my whole life.
Right.
And it's like, well, most of us are not, you know, if you've asked me any time during,
Right.
I can't remember a time I didn't have multiple jobs. So if my second job was going to be my whole life?
Right.
No, it was to pay.
Right.
It was my first job paid bills. My second job's I want to go on vacation or I wanted to have some fun or, you know,
Right.
it was like one job wasn't enough. I had to
Yes.
have 2. So,
Yes.
so there was the fundamental understanding that, well, this is what I want because I want more. I'm not okay
Right.
with just
Right.
what I have. And that's sort of a striving or a wanting. So if someone would ask me if I have wanting in me,
Yes.
I definitely do.
See, I think that's desire.
Yeah.
I think that's desire. And I don't think that and a lot of people, you know, people don't want. I think people have a hard time and people are willing. That's why I asked the question earlier. Do you think it's because it will make them uncomfortable? And I was listening to a podcast the other day, and he does talk about when you start achieving and going for your goals and your dreams and stepping outside of when people will say, oh, you shouldn't do that, or I wish this, or I'm so jealous, or a lot of times it's triggering something in them that they are not doing. And so we naysay and shut somebody else down because if you're going to expand and grow, that's going to push me outside of my comfort zone because it's going to make me aware that I'm not pushing and growing and being the best that I can be. And so I think that's where a lot of naysay.
Yeah, but I mean, I think of everything from, like, if you tell someone you want to run a marathon, go tell 20 people you're going to run a marathon.
Right.
19 of those people will tell you don't do it.
Right.
For whatever
Right.
reason. And it's like, isn't that supposedly a good thing?
Right.
You know? Or
We're
isn't
just so
that
quick to share our opinion.
right? And we think it matters.
Yes. And I think the reason why I do what I do is, well, I'll ask a question. I feel like there's that little bit of resistance in me is like, no, I have people decide for me all the time what I think is what they, you know, how I should bowl, how I should do my golf swing, how I should eat, you know, what kinds of foods I should eat. Everybody's told me and everybody gives me feedback about how I should do my life. I think what I do is just I'll ask, take in opinions, and then I take what I think will be good for me and then I leave the rest.
Mm.
And he's like, oh, he's like, well, that makes sense. And I'm like, because he would get upset, and he's like, well, why didn't you take my advice? And why do you were asking for my advice? I'm like, no, I'm just asking for your thoughts. I want to see how you feel about it. Like it's a litmus test for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what we should all be doing. We all kind of do it in a way.
Mm-hmm.
I just think and he's like, well, you don't have to ask everybody. And I'm like, well, yeah, I do.
Right. Well, if you...
I ask the people that I respect.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, you never take my advice. And I'm like, well, I do sometimes. I kind of blend it.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find the right fit for me.
Right.
So a version that fits for me.
Right. And I think of creative endeavors, everything from... And I'm going back to that Rick Rubin because it was so interesting that he had been so successful. But even after every success, was told the next thing wasn't going to be successful.
Yeah.
But that you were successful in that genre. You can't go and now do rap.
Right.
You're not known for that.
Right.
That that you couldn't be good in a multitude of things.
I mean, look at how many people told Joe Rogan that you're out of your mind for starting a podcast. Even
did he hear that?
Howard Stern even told him.
Really?
Even Howard Stern told him, like, ridiculous. What do you, way back. And a lot of his buddies were like, what are you doing?
Right.
Before podcasting was podcasting.
Right.
But he's like, and so we had listened to one of his podcasts with one of his buddies, and his buddies used to do a travel channel. And so he was always all over the world. And he's like, but that's not going to make you, F you money. That's that'll make you comfortable, but you need to do this and this, because he said TVs and movies only last for a certain period of time before you age out or it dies off.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing else. And he's like, you need to go back into your stand-up comedy. You need to go back and you need to start a podcasting. And all of his friends that he kept doing, you need to start your own podcast. They're like, well, why can't we just come on yours? And he does this whole dialogue, and he's like, but I found that that's what I love doing.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, so I just made it possible. And he had all the naysayers too.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Yeah, I started a real estate podcast. I think it was like 2014, 2015, 2016, somewhere in there. And what I found was that I'm going to all the networking group and all the real estate meetings and all these things. And people would be having the same problems.
Mm.
So I would and I was paying for a studio. I was paying for someone to edit it. And I would do them for about 45 minutes. And I would talk about a particular topic that if someone called me on, I would be like, oh, yeah, this is unusual enough that this person hasn't experienced it.
Mm.
But if you do it enough, you are going to experience it more than once.
Yes.
So one was called Fire, Flood, and Blood, like what to do in a major emergency. One was about the new lead changes.
You should
that were coming.
upload them to our channel.
I know I should upload them. I still have them as little MP4
That's awesome.
files. But I did them, and I did 45 minutes, and they were the professional advice at the time. And so when people would call me, I would say, I actually did a podcast on this. You should go listen to it because I uploaded them on Spotify. There were a few places maybe it wasn't even Spotify at the time. I forget what it was at the time. I can look back, but it doesn't matter. And people would say, well, just can't you tell me? And I'm like, but I spoke about it for 45 minutes because it's not a 5-minute conversation.
Right,
so I was trying
right.
to alleviate. I was trying to be helpful because I was giving away my time for free. I don't get paid by the hour here.
Right.
And these are conversations enough I was having with people. And I felt that I had the professional generosity of there's a fix for this, and here it is.
Yeah.
But I can only allocate $100 to this, which was what I was paying per hour to do the show. But at the time, podcasts weren't a thing, and everybody was like, why are you even doing this? Or I would say, I did an hour-long podcast with the professional in that field. You should listen to it. And they were like, can't you just tell me the answer now? I'm like, no.
Right.
Because I'd have to talk to you for 45 minutes.
Yes, instant gratification.
Go listen to it.
Yes, they want it instant, but they won't take it in. They want a quick one-line answer and move on.
But it was a 45-minute answer.
Yeah.
Which is why it was a podcast.
They don't realize, yes.
But it was funny how, and then I gave that up because it was not seeming to go anywhere. What's the point and all of that other stuff. And, here I am a decade later, practically, on the radio, not talking about anything as a, professionally about a specific topic.
Right.
But how funny some things are full circle a little bit.
Right. How it comes back around.
Yeah. Yeah, but how at the time it was, who was I? And I was out of my mind about the podcasting thing. And now, they say, I don't know, I forget what the percentage of people, but like 49% of all people listen to at least one podcast a week or something like that. And then it keeps increasing every year.
Yeah. I think there's some fascinating conversations, we listen to quite a few. Or Chris will say, hey, do you want to listen to this? And he's like, and so he'll catch me up to where he is. If it's interesting, then I'll pick it up, and then I'll pick it up and listen to it. But I love it.
I've listened to so many synopsises of books that make me know whether I want to read them or not.
Yeah.
That's a big thing for me because I think I'm a heavy reader and I can't possibly read all the books and have all the time to read all the books that I want to read. So I find it as another way, like, in the car, I can just listen to the author talk for an hour about what his book is, and then I can determine if I want to listen to the 8-hour book or not on an Audible, or if I want to read it.
Yes.
And we had the Heather Fowler on last week to talk about dyslexia, and she had listed a couple of books too. And so it's like, I mentioned my books that I'm always talking about all the time, but she had given a couple of books, and she had given us, I really didn't know was really about dyslexia. I mean, I knew what it was, but I really didn't know the details about it that she had. So it was really, really interesting.
So what were some of her details?
Well,
I was trying to load it, but it was so slow when I was
doing it at the time. It is a neurological thing. So our brains are wired for speaking, but they're not wired for reading. 3 different parts of the brain have to light up at the same time for reading to take place.
Oh.
So like we weren't born with brains that were designed to read. So that's A, which I never knew that piece. I thought was really fascinating.
Cool. I did not know that.
And then the other piece was, if it's caught early enough intervention can happen that it could not be an issue.
Wow.
But if it's not caught...
Well, it's almost like training your brain.
Yes. And it's a trained thing. And there's a lot of kinetic piece of it. So like touching and using your hand. And remember how we always say, oh, I write out my shopping list because I will remember 90% of it.
Yes.
That is a piece of it.
Yes.
That is a huge piece of it, using your hand to trace the letters, to make the sounds and all of that stuff. So it was really interesting, but it was useful, I thought, because I was telling her when I was young, I'd never even heard of dyslexia, like in school.
Yeah.
But I also had a kid in the 5th grade who was the class clown who finally showed up in the 5th grade with glasses on because he couldn't see.
Yeah.
He was just an idiot, and like
makes all the difference.
Yeah, he's not good in math. He can't read the board,
and now he's in rocket science.
Now he's putting people on Mars. He just needed his glasses. And so when I think about, I was terrible in music. Well, if someone had taught me to read music, like you just need the proper instruction at the proper time, is really the answer. And then, but that it's an actual thing. And then we started talking about how, I didn't realize how much I read lips until people started wearing masks. And then I'm like, I can't hear you, and I also can't read your lips, so I have no idea what's being said.
It's amazing, too, how much is conveyed on your facial expressions without being able to see that. You take away,
so
everybody's smile, or you can definitely,
So then I have this one for you. Do you think communication is hard? Since so much of our communication is reading body language, that's why texts are weird.
90%.
It's some heavy facial expressions and body language is a huge percentage in understanding in human communication. And now that we, as a society, are Botoxing our face, so we don't have. There was an ad for Botox that said, "Remove your laugh lines." That we are removing emotion from our face. Do you think that changes our human interaction?
Yes, definitely.
Because you would be reading those micro expressions to know what mood you're in, or how you're receiving a comment, or
until I started actually learning to love myself, I did not have any interaction with people. I would even say, and I was kind of proud about it. Not proud about it, but it was something that I was like, I I put it in a chip in my positive bucket of
Yeah, your
saying like
attributes.
yes. I don't make eye contact with anybody in the grocery store or anywhere I go. I don't make eye contact. I stay in my zone. I get my stuff done. Like I don't want to be talked to. Now that I have realized it, maybe not love yourself differently or better, or it's more about being intentional about the energy that you're putting out there. And I want to make people smile. I want to leave a good feeling, because if I'm setting that temperature, I'm vibrating on that temperature. And so if I'm vibrating at a higher temperature than these people are vibrating, I have the ability to lift them up and them to match my vibration. So my experience is going to be better. If I show up in a crappy attitude, guess what I'm going to get matched back with?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm much more aware of I create my experience.
Mm.
We all create our own experience. So what we choose to focus on. So yes, I choose to focus on being intentional about putting good energy out. And it's not like I started I do make eye contact, or I will say something, but I've always said something. If somebody's perfume smells good, or somebody's walking by, I'm like, "Oh, I love your outfit." Or last night in the bathroom, this one woman, she had just a fro, and it was just gorgeous. And just the way, as I was like, man, I would have that in a heartbeat.
Mm-hmm.
And she just was like, she was looking in the mirror, and I was waiting in line, and she did something, and she just walked by me, and I don't know if she saw me checking her out, and she just said, I don't know, it is what it is. I think she it just gets bigger. It just gets bigger no matter what I do. And I'm like, I think it is amazing. And to watch her, she just turned around and she's like, "Oh, you do?" And I'm like, "It does." I'm like, "You have incredible hair."
Mm-hmm.
And then the lady behind me, she was like, "You do." And I said, "Girl, I would rock it." I would have your hair in a heartbeat. But and this is just in Charlotte last night at 11 o'clock at night, and I made her smile, and it impacted the lady behind me. And that woman, you actually just watch when you say something positive or you do something nice for somebody, watch how somebody's shoulders respond.
Mm.
Just even strangers, even when you say hi to them or you acknowledge them, you praise them, a lot of times what I get is people will sit up. People will push their shoulders back. I'm receiving it.
Mm-hmm. Well, they have that video when they tell dogs they're a good boy,
Yes.
especially pound dogs, and their ears change. You can see it visibly on an animal.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But we are an animal.
Yes.
As much as we are up the chain of animals
Yes.
on the
Yes.
scale of hierarchy, we still are very animalistic in a lot of ways.
Yes.
And I was wondering about the Botox, because there have been times that I'm like, wow, I can't read what's happening. And then I tell myself, oh, no. I know they do Botox, so I can't. I'm not
it's
getting the
true.
response that I was going to get, but it's not they're mad. Because there's no expression.
Yes.
There's no crinkle to the eye
Yes.
or whatever. And I have to tell myself, because I'm getting a weird vibe.
Yeah, because you don't know. Yeah.
I can't read the situation because I'm looking for those micro changes on a face.
Yes. And you can't see those. It's even hard when, Botox when your smile doesn't reach your eyes, you don't know if it's reaching their eyes or not. So it
Right.
is very hard to read.
Right.
And so I think it does keep people a little bit more reserved, because we're constantly
In the feedback loop. It's the feedback
we're
loop of what
constantly
looking
looking for feedback.
Right. And positive feedback or negative
Yes.
feedback.
Yes.
And without positive feedback, we interpret
Well,
automatically.
we're animals searching for a temperature. Is this a good is this a safe environment? If it's not, do we need to protect or can we relax?
Yeah. And we go right into that lizard brain of
Yes.
warm or
Yes.
cold. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I thought that was interesting too.
I think Fred, our iguana, definitely knew that we were putting down some good energy. He's like,
Yeah.
I'm home, see you every day.
Yeah, giving me blueberries because
Maybe some new mangoes.
when we were in Grand Cayman, they're overrun by them a little bit. They actually had apparently a year where they'd pay $5 for an animal. They were trying to get rid of them. They were overrunning Grand Cayman.
Chris was saying somewhere else that they were, you were allowed to shoot them.
Yeah,
Like, just,
yeah, that they were considered like
I
a
didn't
pest.
see him overrun. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, oh
parts.
no. So of course one comes up for breakfast and, he's stealing blueberries off of the cup on the trash. He goes up there. So from that point on, whenever we'd have like I'd find some stray stuff, I would give them because, and then I'm like, there's a group shooting them and I'm giving them blueberries.
I know. That's why I was like, don't make him too friendly here because I don't know if other guests will.
Right.
I mean, he is a little bit intimidating. It took me 3 days to get used to him.
I
And
know.
still, I'm like, I'm going to be close to the door. I stood in the door.
I've never heard of an iguana attack. You could have been the first, but I've never heard of that.
They can bite. They have a nasty bite.
I bet.
Won't hurt you, but they said. I mean, but even their claws are like,
Yeah.
oof,
Yeah.
crazy.
And I am the person who is always being yelled at for feeding the animal or feeding the bird.
Yes.
I'm always that person. And
me.
I'm always going to do it. You can yell at me all you want. I'm doing it anyways. I love,
I'm sorry. I'm not taking unsolicited advice. I'm not listening to the theys today.
I didn't ask for permission to feed the birds. I'm feeding the birds. And I know people get bent out of shape about birds, specifically birds.
Yeah.
People really
Well, I
dislike
mean-
birds a lot.
Well, I can understand why because you're just sitting there and like poop comes from the sky.
I got
Like, it just they can get you quick.
Yeah. But if everyone knows that crows have memory, and crows specifically
Yes.
tell other crows if you're mean to them. So maybe you have more poop on your car
That's
because
true.
the crows are all telling everyone what a
That's
nasty
true.
person you are. Maybe you're inviting the poop
I feel like seagulls have got to be in that same
category.
yes level of communication. Well, the truth of the matter is, so everybody, we all need to stop listening to the theys.
Yeah.
Or just
is
use
they
it as
ever
a filter. Use it as
yeah.
a filter. Use it as, is this something that I want to pick up? Is this something that do I resonate with this?
Yeah.
It's actually learning to listen to yourself.
Yeah, and can you put yourself like thinking of running a marathon, for example, and every time you tell people in your circle, in your world, in your company, you hear not to go talk to someone at a running club and
Yes.
find out if it's a good idea. Go talk to someone who has done that thing that you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even then, everything with a grain of salt.
Yeah. Don't take a 5-year couch potato surfer, Grammy nominee.
Well,
Don't
I-
take their advice.
I joke when I was a size 4 and ran every single day, everyone would tell me how bad running was for me, how bad bananas were for me, and how
Yes.
fattening avocados were for me while eating Fritos,
Right.
weighing.
Chunking
at
on those
Frito
Fritos.
weight.
Like, you should be eating that avocado.
Do you know how fattening an avocado is? I'm like, do you know how fattening Fritos are?
God, I love avocados, man.
And I love Fritos.
I like Fritos too. I actually love my Fritos in my with my avocado.
I'm not saying I don't love Fritos, but I'm just knowing if I ate Fritos the way I ate avocados.
I'll take your Fritos and I'll one up you. Watch me make a good dip with my fattening avocado.
And sometimes I think it's people not trying to be the Debbie Downer. I think they're trying to like they're so excited to have knowledge. I know I read a statistic that 85% of restaurants went under, and I can't wait to use that in a conversation
Yes.
somewhere. Or I am
Useless
so
fun fact.
excited that I've read somewhere that something.
I
or
do. I think a lot of times people just want to connect, but sometimes I feel like, and even maybe especially after COVID, it's like negative.
And it's
I
really
feel
funny
like-
because negative is important, and I think I operate negatively 50% of the time.
Really?
I operate from a negative position.
I would not say that about you.
Really?
I wouldn't.
Maybe I'm trying to tamp it down in my head because I think I'm a huge, I can be a huge complainer. I have made such an effort not to.
Really.
Oh my goodness.
See,
Absolutely.
I like to. I will fuss about things like, I get irritated, and it's really where I get bored. Like we were waiting for the golf clubs to come around the belt And nobody tells you, like, if you have big, oversized bags, at least the airports that we were in, they don't tell you that they don't put them on the conveyor belt, that they will be in the bulky. So I remember that when we took our skis out to Montana, I remember that. So I was like, let me go walk around and see. And then I asked, like, you would think they would be in Charlotte. So we watch, and we're tired, ready to go home, and it's ready to get something to eat because now it's like 8:30 at night, and we have not had food since breakfast. So it's waiting, come around the conveyor belt, and like I'm happy just to be off the plane, stretching my legs. Now I'm like, okay, now I need to get some food. Let's get that belt going. So we're standing right at the thing come off, and I'm like, I'm standing there and watching people, and like the conveyor belt drops out too, and then it's like 15 minutes later, and nothing else is still coming, and it's going around, and I'm like. So now I'm like, all right, now I'm getting irritated. So what I just do is I turn it into like a comedy in my head, or I'm like, all right, I start observing. And I said, Chris, there's like 8 people standing right where we're standing. And I'm like, here's all the type A's right here. We're the ones right at the gate. We're going to be the ones to
We're
be
on time. We're picking you up early.
They're the ones who are like, okay, if I'm going to stand here, I'm going to be proactive. I'm doing something about it. Then you go a little bit further down. They're like, okay, I kind of want my luggage, but it's not a really big deal. And then there's all the laid back people like, I don't care if it's at the last of the conveyor belt. It's just going to come around, and I'll grab it. I'll grab it when it goes. And Chris is like, you're right.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, look at this guy in the flip-flops. He is so type A right now. So he had his flip-flops on, but his toes were like
On a branch?
Yes.
On a branch.
They're like hanging over the edge of the,
Holding
on
it.
the step. Yeah, they're hanging over the edge of the foam.
Rounded.
I was like, look at that, man. I'm like, he's got dealing in. I'm like, I bet you could walk over and tip him forward, and he would just lean back. So that's how I entertain my time. He's like, you're going to go to hell. I'm like, that wasn't bad. But I'm like, start entertaining myself by looking at people watching. But, people give you stuff to.
People give you stuff.
People give you stories, that's for sure.
I love it. I love people watching, and I feel like we don't do it nearly as much. And I feel like people are not nearly as interesting because they're always all on the phone.
Yeah.
So they're not also as interesting.
So on our row aisle.
So last week I'm walking and I'm bringing Heather so she can grab her car, and there is a crazy man yelling in the street of Nashua, Main Street. You've seen those crazy,
Yes.
those yellers. And he's pushing a baby carriage, but I can't see from the distance if there's a baby in there. And I'm thinking to myself, please don't let there be a baby in this carriage, because we're going to have to get involved, because this guy is yelling crazy at the top of his lungs across the
Some
street.
people were just not meant to reproduce.
And then I'm like squinting, and I'm like, I see the baby carriage. Oh, okay. There's no baby in the baby carriage. Just pushing a baby carriage full of stuff. Full of his crazy. But it's like, and I would like other people watching besides that.
Yes, that's true.
But everybody else is just in their phone.
Yes.
I miss people watching.
It is funny. We were sitting on the beach watching the sun go down, and a lot of people come right down to the beach, from wherever they'll walk over to the street. So there's a lot of people standing on the beach waiting for it. But there's people that are boogie boarding and surfers. There's kids swimming, and it's just funny how if you just stop and get still, and you just are watching like all of these lives. Like we're watching this group of teenagers, I don't know, or college. They're on, they look like teenagers, but they're all doing their selfie poses, and they're all dressed up in their dresses, and they all ordered their new outfits, and they're like coming down for the sunset. But then you see this like French couple with their little babies, and there's like 2 moms there. They're smoking a cigarette. The guys are drinking a beer. The kids are running around in just their diapers on, and they're all speaking French. And it's like nobody cares, but everybody is doing their life side by side. And there's no judgment. Like, you do you. Like, here, I feel like we restrict somebody. Like, I get smoking. You don't do it. But, like, nobody's making a big deal about it. And how many people, if they were doing that on the beach, they would be like, are you kidding me? You're smoking in front of your kid. It's not the best decision, but you know what? That's not mine.
Right.
Nobody else carries other people's stuff. Like, hey, they're living their life. The kids are happy. The parents are happy. Everybody's safe. They're doing their thing. We're all going to die some way. It's not saying that I support it, but man, we get so caught up in other people's business. And I'm like, and I was just in a place where like, man, I'm excited for them. Look at all the girls. They're doing their selfies. I actually offered to go down and take one for them so they could all get in the picture and have
it be longer than arm distance away.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like 8 of them. You know,
Right.
it's hard to get 8 girls in. It's hard to get me and Chris in the same
Frame.
I can get his chest, but
Right.
I'm like, well, you have to hold it. Then he holds it, and then you can see my
Right.
forehead.
You got my chin up and then all air.
Yeah.
When we were dancing at this restaurant, I was so pleased because I thought dancing does something where it's just in your body, whether you're 3 in your dance or you're 83. Everyone, every age, no one's too fat to dance or not the right weight to dance or their hair didn't come out right. It's just an expression of joy.
Yes.
And
it's moving energy.
I don't think we're dancing enough.
We don't.
I don't think
I
we're
don't
dancing
think we
enough.
dance enough. We don't laugh enough, and we don't smile enough.
Let's change that this week.
Yes.
Let's dance, laugh, and smile.
And if you think about it, and I think that's why music is so important, because music puts out a vibration. Our voice puts out a vibration. Our song puts out a vibration. And then when you're dancing and moving to that energy, I don't know.
Because then you're harmonizing.
Have
on
you
it.
ever seen somebody that's miserable dancing? Other than like high school kids, when they got
Goth,
the arms in
yeah.
their. Well, that's true.
Right. But it does change the way you feel. So make sure you dance, preferably with someone, but if not with someone by yourself.
Yes, turn on you and smile more.
Yeah. And laugh, if not with someone by
And listen
yourself.
to your gut. Pause before you take some advice from them.
And that's it. Another Thursday with Lisa and Robin on the mic on WSMN 1590 AM, 95.3 FM. You can always watch, stream, and listen on WSMN.live. Please follow us on YouTube and like us on Spotify. Have a great week.
WSMN 1590, WSMN 95.3 FM Nashua. Listen.